You know what? I feel as though there's been a fair bit of negativity on my channel in the past. I have been reading a lot of terrible stories and ranting about those that I find overrated. Therefore, some people, mostly those who can't handle criticism regarding their favorite stories, have accused me of hating creepypastas and not being a true fan, whatever that's supposed to be. You people could not be more wrong. I actually really enjoy creepypastas when they are done right and effectively. So today, in honor of me reaching 50, 60, 70,000 subscribers, I thought I'd lighten up the mood a bit by sharing 20 creepypastas I actually enjoy. Now remember, this is just my opinion, and while these may not necessarily be the scariest or most well-written stories out there, they are the ones that I enjoyed reading, watching, and thinking about the most. So if a story you like isn't on here, it's my opinion, okay? Also, I feel a bit sick of explaining the same stories over and over, so for this particular video, I will mostly focus on why I enjoy these stories, and not much about what the stories are about. So if you haven't read them yet, go look them up. And please, don't go down complaining in the comments about that like some of you did in my underrated creepypastas video. It's not my fault, you're too lazy to go read it. In my opinion, actually reading it for yourself is so much better than listening to someone else read it for you. Without further ado, I present to you my top 20 favorite creepypastas. Number 20. Marina Mortegard Glassgore. Well then, here we go. Marina Mortegard Glassgore. This story is short but very effective. I love the fact that it takes something as ordinary as a normal, friendly-looking guy and turns him into something rather creepy. I also like the fact that the story actually has a video to go along with it, and even though it's obviously made in Windows Movie Maker, it still fits, as it, like I said, goes along with the story perfectly. The only thing holding the story back though, is the fact that the people who supposedly killed themselves over the video managed to send their eyes and whatever to YouTube through letters. How would they do that? Oh well, I guess suspension of disbelief can do wonders sometimes, if the story is written well enough. Number 19. The Russian Sleep Experiment. Now, before you go all crazy, let me explain myself. Remember that the placements on this list are merely determined by how much I enjoy the story. And while the Russian Sleep Experiment is very popular and very well written, with gruesome detail and an interesting, intriguing, and believable premise, with it taking place after World War II, personally, I enjoyed these next few stories a bit more than this one. That does not mean that the story is bad though in any way. It's fantastic and very creepy. This list was very hard to make, as I really had to think about where I wanted to place each story. Turns out, this one made it to number 19. What I like about this story are the very detailed descriptions and the unsettling thought of the fact that something like this could have actually happened. Do I even need to mention MKUltra? That was a secret experiment conducted by none other than the United States themselves on innocent civilians. That's crazy! Number 18. Abandoned by Disney. Abandoned by Disney tells us of the author venturing into an old, abandoned resort made by Disney. Inside, he comes across some very creepy stuff, like whispering and distant crying, swinging meat hooks, and a rotting, yet still alive Mickey Mouse mascot with yellow blood and spooky stuff. What I enjoy about this story is how it feels very real, as it takes inspiration from real-life occurrences, like when Disney actually closed down another resort, Treasure Island or whatever it was called, I don't remember. The fact that a zombie Mickey is also roaming the premise is very nightmare-inducing, and the story describes what he does in gross detail. A minor nitpick about the story though, is the fact that the author doesn't seem at all fazed by the paranormal happenings like the whispering in certain rooms at all. I would turn back and run away immediately if that happened to me. I also feel like the story was a bit rushed towards the end. Despite a bit of a letdown ending, that doesn't take away from the fact that the story itself has some very solid build-up and an original premise that really elevates it. Number 17. Misfortune GB. Misfortune GB, the mysterious secret game embedded in certain copies of popular games. Say, what makes this story work? Well, first of all, what I've noticed about many creepypastas is that the antagonist, or evil creature, often refers to themselves as God. I think this is the case because many people view God as someone who will bring peace and justice to the world, and many people view God as a symbol of comfort and safety, someone to look up to. When this calm and collected being is then turned into something evil and malicious, it could spark fear in many readers of the stories. In many stories though, like Sonic.exe, the execution is very poor, and sometimes even laughable. With Misfortune GB though, the term God works very well with the subject material, given the fact that the evil creature is assumed to be the devil himself, and when you're in his realm, he is your god. The fact that the game can be found on rare copies of games makes the story even more intriguing, as it almost tempts you to go out and buy numerous copies just to see if it actually exists. Maybe it's all a marketing ploy made by Nintendo to sell more games! That makes it all the more evil! Damn you, Nintendo! Or maybe not. Number 16. JVK 1166Z.esp. I am gonna be honest with you guys. In my opinion, most video game creepypastas aren't really that scary. If you're gonna make a creepypasta about video games, you better make sure you have something original to bring to the table. We've had so many stories about haunted video games, main characters appearing in hyper-realistic and bloody gory ways, and lots of murder and fourth wall breaking and yada yada yada. So when a story like JVK comes along, it has to put a new spin on the genre to stand out amongst the hundreds of mediocre and downright terrible stories that are released every year. So how well does this one fare up? Pretty damn well. What I enjoy about this story is that it takes a creepy hack and turns it into something much bigger and more dangerous than previously expected. The assassin has a very intimidating presence, as the author really knows how to build suspense, and the last email the author receives from his friend is downright bone-chilling, as everything had built up to that moment. Still, as the story ends, we're left with numerous questions. Is the assassin real? What's behind that door? And why should you watch the sky? It really makes you think, and leaves a lot up to the imagination, which any great story should. Number 15. The Rake. The Rake, one of the more famous creepypasta creatures. I like the Rake much more than Slender Man, simply because of the disgusting and immensely intimidating design of the thing. It almost looks human, but once you see what it actually is, it's too late. And instead of simply having some spooky buzz static and a nice fashion sense, the Rake has long, sharp, dangerous claws. A bit deadlier than just some tentacles. The Rake has also not been as violently ruined as Slender Man, with all the fan art and fanfics and fangirls and fan games and... I swear it used to be different. Number 14. No End House. So, No End House is a story about a creepy house with no end. Oh really? I enjoy this story because it feels like an urban legend, almost. A house deep in the middle of nowhere where thrill seekers can venture in and see if they're strong enough to make it out alive. It's a very interesting concept, and while some things in the story doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, like how did the author's friend get out of the house, maybe it's explained in the sequels, I don't know, I haven't read them yet, it's still a very enjoyable story, and has some imagery that will definitely stick with you. Number 13. Barbie Avi. This story takes something that really shouldn't be all that scary and turns it into something that makes you very uncomfortable. I mean, at first glance, a simple interview with a woman doesn't seem that bad, but it's the implications that get to you. What with her pinching her skin, and the fact that the video is titled Barbie.avi, and that you never find out what secrets lie behind the locked door in the abandoned house, coupled together with the quote-unquote moan, it's quite mysterious, and I love this story because of that fact. Number 12. Pokemon Creepy Black. Pokemon Creepy Black is a very interesting story that takes elements from Lavender Town and turns it into a mystery that is both intriguing and off-putting at the same time. We've all wondered what the world of Pokemon would be like if killing was allowed. Well, at least I've wondered about it. This story offers a take on that whole idea that is to my liking personally. With the help of the ghost, the player grows attached to it over the course of the game, making its inevitable betrayal all the more saddening and eerie. What this story would create is a whole other thing entirely though, but the roots are very admirable, as this was one of the first creepypastas of its kind, and it's not a bad place to start. Number 11. Gateway of the Mind. Gateway of the Mind, the story of an old man who allegedly comes in contact with the deceased and eventually God himself. The concept for this creepypasta is very creative and deals with a subject that many find interesting: the possible existence of a higher being and being able to communicate with it. Speaking to people beyond the grave has always fascinated people. This story plays around with that idea and portrays it in a way that makes it seem like something no one would want. It also makes the reader imagine just how the old man in the story feels, what with him not being able to see, hear, feel, or anything. It's a very uncomfortable thought, and the final message the man tells the scientists is sure to give a chill down your spine. I have spoken with God, and he has abandoned us. The reason I believe this final sentence works so well is because many people look up to a higher being, like their God, and when this symbol of comfort and hope is twisted into a monster or untrustworthy figure, it could really stick with the reader, which is fantastic. Great story. Number 10. Pokemon Come Follow Me. Yeah, 2 Pokemon stories. This one is pretty damn well written though. Perhaps not the most hard to disprove, what with the fact that no one could have known what happened to the detective in the end, when he plays the game and some other details, but hell, I really enjoy this story. It's written almost like a crime and mystery drama, and a brilliant one at that. Throughout the story, the detectives come closer and closer to the truth behind why the children committing suicide did so because of the games, and you're left anticipating the reveal while you're at the edge of your seat. And once you finally realize the truth, it's crazy. Number 9. Tapa. Tapa is a creepypasta with a phenomenal premise. What if you created an imaginary friend, and over the course of a few months, this friend starts to change, and reveals his or her true colors, and set out to murder you? Tapa gives you just that. The story unnerves you, and makes you identify with the author, as you imagine yourself in his shoes. What would you do if your imaginary friend turned hostile? Would you try to forget them? Ignore them? Would you even fight back? Could that even be possible? Thoughts like these are what crossed my mind while I was reading the story. And that's the sign that you've written something top-notch. Oh, and a tulpa is an actual thing. Terrifying. Number 8. Mario. Hey, a creepypasta that actually happened. This story takes something that is very simple and very innocent, but when given the circumstances, they seem uncanny. Most of the things that happen in the story aren't even that scary, they're just odd, leaving you fairly confused. And once something scary actually does happen, it sticks out, and in turn, sticks out in your memory. And yes, the picture is very unpleasant. The story leaves you in a state wondering what the whole hack could actually mean, and the cryptic and downright strange messages the hack conveys hints at something, but never actually reveals what. It's awesome. Number 7. The Harbinger Experiment. What? The Harbinger Experiment is not at number 1? Not even in the top 5? What is this madness? Well, if you watched a few of my other top lists, you would know that I more often than not tend to place this certain story very high on my lists. But I'm not gonna lie, even though I really like this story, it's not my favorite. It's beautifully written, the main character is likable, and the monster is gross and awesome. But I enjoyed these next few stories a little bit more. Major props to the author though. You, my friend, are a genius, and you've created one heck of a great story. Number 6. NES Godzilla. NES Godzilla is nothing original. Oh, a haunted game cartridge. That's scary? Well, yes. Even though I've personally grown fairly sick of haunted game creepypastas, NES Godzilla actually managed to get to me. Mostly because of Red. That is some really impressive sprite work. Don't lie, if you ever played an NES game and this thing appeared on screen, you would scream. Oh yeah, the sprite work. Don't even get me started on the sprite work. It is unbelievably good. The person who made it, who is most likely the author as well, has obvious talent, and it really shows. Normally I would criticize the story for jumping the shark near the ending, but for some strange reason, I really didn't mind it that much. Sure, it's unrealistic, and I give certain stories a hard time because of it, but not for this story, since it makes you care about the author, and makes you sympathize with him and his friend Melissa. The ending is satisfying, exciting, and sweet. So I like the story as a whole. Number 5. The Operator. Yep, not Slenderman, The Operator. Does it even count as a creepypasta? Is Slenderman even a creepypasta? I don't know, I'm still putting The Operator here. Why? Well, the Slenderman from Marble Hornets is very different from the urban legend who kidnaps children and such. This guy is able to manipulate people, tamper with electronics, and has no limits with who he hunts. While Slenderman has been violently ruined, the Operator still has a presence whenever he's on screen, and every time you see him, you know things are about to get real. Oh, and there's a Marble Hornets movie now, and Doug Jones is playing Slenderman! Give it to me now! Number 4. Psychosis. Many things can be used to describe this story. Smart? It is. Well written? It is. Scary? It is. What if everyone you know, and have ever known, and will ever know, are actually puppets, posing as people in order to ease you in so they can finally deliver the final blow and take over your mind? What I absolutely adore about this story is the incredible ending. It's clever, it's thought-provoking, and actually quite depressing once you think about it. And the final paragraph is an emotional gut punch. It was all justified in the end. I can't do this story justice, you have to read it. And don't you dare call it lame just because you didn't understand the ending. I will facepalm very, very hard. Number 3. Ben Drowned. Yeah, I know I put this story on my overrated creepypastas list. So yeah, I didn't find it that scary. But does that mean that it's a bad story? Heck no. It is incredibly well set up and executed. It really makes you care for the protagonist and makes you want him to succeed and make it out okay. Ben is a very interesting and menacing entity who confuses both the author and the reader. The fact that gameplay which the story describes actually exists is very commendable. So yes, even though I didn't find it as scary as everyone was saying it was, I still, sure as hell, enjoyed it. You know, this story is just so cool, it could totally work as a movie or something.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, Dennis. I'm actually working on a project right now that you might find quite interesting.
What? Jacob? How did you get in my video?
You asked if I could come on the show. You said you wanted to have me appear out of nowhere in a collab for a sort of such and such subscriber special or something. It was a whole thing. We talked about it on Skype for an hour. It was a big thing we arranged. It was organised.
Oh yeah. Right, fine. What do you want?
Well, as I was saying, I'm currently working on directing a movie called Darkland Ben Drowned, which, as you can probably guess from the title, is the feature film adaptation based upon Alex Hall's short story Ben Drowned. The movie is set on a fictional island. To be honest with you, the reason for that, partly because I live by the coast, and also because playing Majora's Mask and reading the short story, there is that sense of dread and also that sense of loneliness, that sense of quirkiness from Majora's Mask of these interesting characters, and that sense of isolation that the short story gives you, that sort of an island in the middle of nowhere seems like an obvious choice. All of the key ingredients from the short story are here. The game, the statue, the yard sale, the best friend leaving, the Cleverbot discussions, all of that is all here. What we've done is we've expanded upon that and built around the entire mythology, not only of the entity of Ben, the cartridge itself, but also this town that they live in, how different mysteries all tie into the same thing. It's a much bigger story, but it never loses sight of where it got its inspiration from, because what we wanted to do was create that mood, that darkness, and that sense of weird isolation that you get when you both play Majora's Mask and when you read Ben Drowned. I think people are going to be really, really happy with it. We got some really great actors in the film, I'm really happy to say. We got Johnny Clark, who spent 3 years on one of the UK's most popular soap operas, which is Hollyoaks. We got Peter Corey with 4 BAFTAs up his sleeve. We got Yannick Archer from the Confused.com campaign. We got Nathaniel Francis from the remake of Night of the Living Dead. You know, it's a great cast. We got a really incredible opportunity to work with some really wonderful people, and it's going to be really spooky.
Wow. Truly breathtaking. Ladies and gentlemen, give a round of applause to Jacob Sherwood from the Michael Awar YouTube channel, host of the Bad Creepypasta Show. Go watch him. They make some awesome quality content that will make you laugh out loud.
Well, yeah, I assumed you'd find it interesting, because again, this was a planned thing we did. I don't understand how you've forgotten that happened.
Get out of my video. Number 2. Kennel Cove. Remember debunking famous creepypastas, and how I said I didn't know if the story was real or not? Well, turns out I was wrong. It's fictional and was written by a man by the name of Chris Straub. You wonderful man. This story feels very authentic. It feels very much like how a real forum discussion would go. Some people use proper grammar and some don't. It's awesome. The story also leaves subtle hints and makes the reader think for themselves, which is fantastic. Not much is spelled out for you, which I respect to no end. I hate when stories insult your intelligence by making everything obvious, clear as day, black and white. So this story is a breath of fresh air. It's well thought out, very well executed, and the final forum post is sure to leave you immensely unsettled. What I also really like about the story is that it leaves a lot up to the reader's own imagination, and leaves you with your own interpretation of what might have happened. Oh, and I like the spin-offs as well, like Tales of the Laughingstock, even though it may not fit with what the original story was trying to convey. I'd say the spin-offs are more of an addition rather than a replacement for what the original story implied, and you can choose to believe it to be a continuation of the original or not. I sure enjoyed them too. Well, it's time for my number 1. This might not be the scariest creepypasta ever, and it may not have left me wanting to sleep with a light on, and it may not even have made me paranoid. But you know what it did? It pulled me into a story that had twists, turns, and things that kept me invested for the entirety of its runtime. It may very well be the best creepypasta that I have ever read. Not because it's the scariest or creepiest, but because it's so well written and thought out. Which story is it? Number 1 goes to Squidward's Suicide. Nah, I'm just kidding, it sucks, look at them 10 swabs. Right, back to seriousness. Yes, the real number 1 spot goes to The Showers. So, how come I love this story so much? Well, let's see here. It's beautifully written. It's perfectly paced. It has my favorite creepypasta character ever in it. Not a monster, not an entity, not some otherworldly being. An ordinary man. Mr. Maze. Mr. Maze is such a complex character. with his own personal struggles, flaws, and hardships. He's a wonderful character who you feel for, and you get the sense that what he has been through really traumatized him. The story also has no blood or gore whatsoever, but uses something as simple as pale white children and turn them into creepy, mysterious, and unsettling things. Not everything is explained to the reader. Like I said before about Candle Cove, it does not insult your intelligence, and I find that splendid. It's just a nearly flawless story that everyone should read if they have not already. Please, go read it if you haven't. I love it, I love it, I love it, I love it, I love it. That's it, I'm done. So yeah, those are my top 20 picks for my favorite creepypastas. For now. Because God knows I change my opinion a lot. But hey, that's not being hypocritical, like some people have called me. Everyone changes their opinions as times change. Who knows, in a year or two, I might have different opinions about these stories. But that's for another time. And I have yet to read Pen Pal. I have to, as soon as possible. Well, thanks for watching, guys. I'd love to hear your favorite stories down in the comments. I think that could spark some interesting discussions. Oh, and we're at 70,000 subscribers. That is unbelievable. Without you guys, none of these videos would ever be possible. I cannot thank you enough. Thank you for always being there for me, and always being supportive. Thank you for being the best audience in the world. Thank you. Goodbye everyone, and I hope you'll all have amazing days. Or nights. Sweet dreams, and stay awesome. Goodbye. You're a kid now, you're a squid now, you're a kid, you're a squid, you're a kid, you're a squid, you're a kid now.